Okay, so moving into the magic theory. For me, what that means is that the Navidson record is real. It is a real it's a real movie. All the analysis of it and shit is correct. And Navidson and Zampano are the same person. Now they do mention how Zampano was blind. I don't know if they ever said he was like that his whole life. I believe there was I think in one of the appendices when he's talking about like the rifle and shit, where it's like a letter he wrote, it made it sound like he could see at some point, and then maybe he went blind later. I might be completely misremembering that, but I don't know if it's like yeah he was blind his entire life, or maybe it could have happened later. And clearly, Navidson, after the last time in the house, one of his eyes was fucked up. I think he was blind in that eye. It's possible he lost sight in the other eye as well. What I think it is then is Navidson as Zampano is writing this analysis, essentially trying to find meaning in his life. Or specifically, he's trying to find meaning in that experience. Because maybe he really didn't come out of it that okay. And for me, something that's very telling is the final scene of the Navidson record, where Zampano himself is even kind of narrating about it. He's like, look, it would have been so easy to end on just a happy scene of the family talking, because that is what's going on. It's the family talking, having a good time, laughing, I think looking at some old pictures. But it doesn't just stop there. It doesn't freeze frame on like them laughing or some shit. Instead, the last image is of a street lamp just flickering on and off. And then it cuts to black. I feel like if Navidson wasn't if he really ended in just a much better place, and he's like, yes, like I'm good, everything in my life is good, the laughing family would make a lot more sense of an ending. And him being Zampano and trying to find meaning in all this shit, I don't think would make any sense. But the ending with the street lamp flickering on and off makes it seem like something's off, something's wrong. Almost like there's a spark missing. My favorite scene in House of Leaves is when Navidson is in that final exploration of the house, and he starts reading a book. And the book is House of Leaves. And as there's like no light, it's like his flashlight is dead. He pulls out a matchbook. So he'll like burn a match and try to do some reading. And then burn a match, try to do some reading. And then he starts like ripping out pages that he's already read and using them to feed the flames. And like he keeps doing that, getting to the point where like the match is burning all the way down to his fucking hands and he can feel the fire licking his skin, but he has to do it to keep reading, and he just has to consume this book until there is nothing left. In the magic theory version, I feel like this is Zampano and Navidson. It's like their desperate search to find the meaning in this experience, or in a sense to reclaim what was lost in the house. Like it is that desperation to find something, anything, but coming up short. Because Zampano to me does feel like he was this very lonely man. And excuse me, if he is Navidson, I feel like then it is Karen died. So when Zampano is talking about, like, yeah, here's some of, like, my old lovers, like Beatrice, blah, 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 I don't remember all the other names. That could be people after Karen died. Or it could be people he knew before Karen. It could be just him bullshitting. Like, assuming, again, they are the same person. I feel like that is probably one of the better points against it. However, one thing I always thought was really interesting is when Zampano was talking about the Minotaur, when he first brings it up, he talks about the actual story of King Minos. And how it's like, yeah, like he had this... What I think happened in the story of King Minos and the Minotaur is not that his wife got fucked by a bull because Zeus was mad at him and that led to this child. I believe it was, he just had a really ugly baby, like this nasty, deformed baby, put it in a labyrinth where essentially he could hide the child so he didn't have to look at this disgraceful, like disgusting disgrace to his family name and shit. I feel like that is Zampano talking about the issues he has with his own, either an issue with his father, because he was the ugly child, or him as a father and the issues he had with his son. I don't know how close Chad and Navy really were. Again, it seemed like they were neglecting their children. So to me, it is not an impossibility that, yeah, this is, whenever Zampano is narrating about that, it is Navidson lamenting his relationship with his son. There's this one part that's all crossed out, it's all in red, where he's talking about the relationship between Jacob and Esau from the Bible. And given the fact that those were twins who were really close, but then, I don't know how close they really were, but at the very least, like, they had a major falling out. And while their relationship, at one point, they kind of had an understanding, they also went their separate ways and never saw each other again, which is exactly what happened to Navy and Tom. They were super close, had a falling out, then saw each other again because of the house, got an understanding, they made up for it, but because Tom died, they never saw each other again. And to me, that, like, if it was just in there, like the Jacob and Esau parallels, it'd be like, oh, okay, like, I can see what they're going for here, this is interesting. The fact that it's all crossed out, to me, reads as Zampano talking about the relationship he had with his twin, but it's just so painful. Especially how, like, the last thing he had really said about his brother was, he will always let you down. And just his regret eating him. He's like, I can't include this in the manuscript. I can't talk about it. It just hurts too much. But, you know, Johnny is able to recover it. So, sorry, were you trying to use that for a note? And that's what I think. Again, that's one of the theories. And I'll be honest, it's the one I'm not as passionate about, and it's also like, that's a really depressing, and it's House of Leaves. It's not a happy story, just look at Johnny. But it's like, yeah, when you've got sea cats, they're like, here's the magic ending and the trick ending, and here's the happy ending. It doesn't work like that with House of Leaves. So I guess I'll move on to the trick ending, which is, Zampano made it all up. And it's like, when Johnny says that, yeah, like, there's no pun intended, but there is no record of the Navidson record, I think he's just kind of a crazy old man making shit up, but I can't put it down. That is what actually happened. What I think of Zampano here, so if he's not Navidson, he is his own person. He is this aspiring writer and aspiring creator who just had, like, he's very well read. He seems like he's very well educated on that kind of shit. He's like, I want to make a magnum opus. This great work, this great piece of fiction that is going to move people, that is going to change people. It's going to inspire people. And this is his great work. And he died before he could finish it. And I'm going to be honest, this is very contradictory and weird to say. I don't think he could ever finish it, and I also think he did. I'll explain what I mean. So going back to the House of Leaves scene, and they go, Navidson reading it and Johnny burning it. Or excuse me, Navidson reading it and burning it. In this theory, where they are not the same person, I feel like, especially because it's like at the end of the Navidson record, I feel like that is a reflection of Zampano realizing, I'm getting to the end. There's not when it comes to the plot, I don't have a lot left to write. I don't have a lot left to analyze. House of Leaves is almost done. And it terrifies him. Because this is what he's been working to for years. This is what he spent so much of his time on. Like, so much of his soul is in this work. So Navidson flipping through it and trying to consume it and, like, keeping that fire going, to me, it's Zampano trying to keep his own fire going and find that spark of, if I finish this book, I have nothing left. I need to keep writing on it. I need to keep creating. I need to keep adding. I believe he is someone who was like, I will never, like, he could never finish it because he would never be happy with it. He would always find things to add. He'd always find things to cross out. And I do think, that like with the King Minos, Jacob and Esau shit, he then probably did have a strained relationship with his father or his son and a strained relationship with his brother. And Tom, like Navy and Tom are reflections of that and shit. But I feel like it is him trying to find that inner fire and trying to keep it going, trying to feed his creative spark. But he can't anymore. Navidson finished the book. And after that, he had nothing. I don't feel it's like in his mind, he wasn't done yet. He's like, I still have things to add. I still have things I can do. But almost like in his soul, he knew, I'm finished. But he didn't want to be. And ultimately, he died. I don't think it was suicide. They don't ever really say what it was. I think he just kind of had a heart attack or so. And it might have just been that, like that, just struggling to find more to do and knowing there was nothing left to give. Essentially, just, I guess it's like they kind of crossed each other out, and by doing so, it kind of crossed him out. Like, I don't know if I'm articulating that quite right. But that's what I feel like really happened. Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. That is basically, like, those are the two theories. It's like, yeah, it's not a happy theory, but I think it's a very interesting theory, and to me, it's less depressing than the magic theory one of, like, yeah, this is what happened to Navidson after. It's like, no, he is just a fictional character. He is a reflection of this man's ambition and all the things he feels like he had to leave behind to accomplish it, and while in a sense he did, he was never happy with it. It is really fucking sad. But regardless, after Navidson finishes the book, and it all burns out, and he's floating in darkness, the last thing he sees is like this blue will-o'-the-wisp, like this speck of blue light, blue flame. And to me, it's like, okay, what happened was after the book was gone, after all the creative energy was burned up and shit, Navidson is at the core of the house. And that's why the house is in blue. It's a reflection of that blue light and like what the core of it is. And I feel like the character of Navidson is able to find hope in the core. And he's able to like hold on for just long enough for Karen to come find him. I think Zampano just found emptiness. Like just this cold nothing. And without the fire to keep him going, he gave up the ghost. So for me, that's really all I have to say about House of Leaves. Like, I very much enjoyed it. It's not a happy story. My understanding of it is not happy. And I feel like I should also say, there's a part where Johnny, in his last chapter, he meets some people that are talking about House of Leaves. Like, they reference it in a song of theirs because they're a band. Johnny looks at the book itself, and it's like House of Leaves by Zampano with, like, edited notes by Johnny Truant and shit. I'm like, okay. Either this person right now is not Johnny, so maybe Johnny didn't kill himself. I don't know. It is also possible that this is Johnny and he is just hallucinating, which he's done throughout the book, so I feel like that's the most likely. There's also a line there, I don't remember what the line was, that was written in purple. And also, if you look at the cover of House of Leaves, it's like House in blue. Like House of Leaves by the actual writer, not by Zampano. I don't remember his name. It's like Mark something. And then in purple, it says a novel. I don't fucking know what purple means. I'm going to be perfectly, completely honest. Yeah, I loved it. I had a great time reading it. I'm glad I finally got to read it, and I'm glad I was reading an actual fucking book again. And as seen with right now, like a couple hundred pages into Mistborn, I'm glad I'm physically reading again, and I hope I keep that going. Um, so yeah, that's about it. I'll see you. Okay, so I'm gonna be completely honest. As I was setting up my phone to record, as I was just sitting there, I saw like how sunken and dark my eyes were looking for a second. I'm like, okay, I kind of just want to. That's really funny to me. I'm just gonna sit like that for a second and not say anything, and then just go to the video. But for today's video, I'm finally gonna talk about House of Leaves. So I spent pretty good chunk of the month of June reading this book. Again, I think it was about 2.5 weeks, yeah, somewhere around there, maybe 1.5, not exactly sure. But I was reading it, and it felt so good to be reading a physical book again. I know I've said this a few times in like car talk videos and such, but I have to bring that up. I've read some shit on my phone, like reading manga. I've listened to some audiobooks, but actively holding a fucking book, I didn't, excuse me, I didn't realize how much I missed that feeling. And so I really want to be reading more books again. Like I've said, I've started reading Mistborn, The Final Empire. When I'm done with it, assuming I like it, and I'm liking it a lot so far, I'm probably going to pick up 2 and 3. I've got Dune over there on my shelf. I do plan on reading that. Like, this is all shit that's been on the list. After that, we'll see exactly what I go into, because I do have like quite a bit of manga I want to read. I'm supposed to fucking read One Piece. I don't know if that's gonna happen. Holy shit. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. It's not a JJNW'S video without a tangent on nothing. Anyways, point. House of Leaves, I loved reading it. One thing I went into House of Leaves knowing, I don't know if that's really the right word, I guess the perception of House of Leaves that I was aware of is, hey bud, sorry, my cat's over here, I'm just gonna give him some love, is people have said that this book is impossible to adapt. Now, you can adapt the story of the Navidson record, but given how much of the book is like reading, there's appendices, there's like letters and shit, you've got all these footnotes, and some of the footnotes are just, yeah, referencing this thing, minor shit, and then you'll have like these several page long footnotes of Johnny, who was a guy reading the manuscript about the movie, like reading a critical dissertation on a movie that may or may not actually exist. We'll get to that. But you'll have like these footnotes of him just like going on completely random fucking tangents. There's also the issue of the formatting and how there's times where you'll just have completely normal shit on the page. And then you'll have shit where it's all diagonal, or how there's like 2 words on a page and then 3 words on another page, or how instead of like, all right, you read the page and then you read the next page, you were just reading across both pages, all that kind of shit. And 100% that aspect, the formatting, is something that you just can't adapt. Well, I feel like maybe a visual novel, because especially if you're reading it in like novel mode, where you just like got the text on the screen, you could make it like a couple words at a time. You can make it diagonal. You can have just these long fucking crazy blocks of text. That's not impossible. Now, maybe with the way the technology works, maybe it technically is, at least with like the diagonal shit. But I feel like you could probably do that. And then even I know in VN, like I know CCats and Hirashi do it, where you could just have tips and you can like check your tips. That's probably where you could have like some of the appendices. You could have like the letters from Johnny's mom. The footnotes could maybe show up like that, but honestly, I feel like, again, to compare it to CCats, because I can't escape this fucking story, literally there's a part where they're talking about like, oh yeah, this is a history of Zampanio's old lovers. The first fucking name is Beatrice. Johnny, he has a lot of sexual escapades, sexcapades, but one of them is with a woman named Kyrie, because of course I can't escape CCats. Because there's times where they'll just like, here's what's going on the board, and then it'll kind of cut to what's going on in the metaverse. I feel like you could do something like that with House of Leaves, where it's like, all right, here's what's going on in the Navidson record, and then you would just like get a sprite of Johnny and like the background would go like a little like translucent or so. I think it's one of the first times it happens. I think Karen goes up to Navidson. She says something like how the water heater's broken. So then they would get a bit translucent. You just get Johnny superimposed on them. I guess like he's fucking Monica from Doki Doki Literature Club. And then just doing his long, couple page long rant about this random story involving talking to a bunch of girls and making up a story about being on a barge, about birds of paradise, about how he was involved in like an underground boxing ring, how it relates or doesn't relate to what he's talking about, and then just come back to the Navidson record like nothing happened. It would be weird. It would be super jank, but that is what House of Leaves is. It's weird. Its formatting and shit is super jank. But it gives it a really unique personality that I loved. I feel like, yes, it is definitely best as a book. I think a VN could work in terms of adapting it into a show or a movie. Not as strongly, but I think it could be done. Again, you would essentially just have the Navidson record is the main thing. Every now and then you would just cut to Johnny. And essentially, again, in kind of like the middle of like reading over Zampano's manuscript, seeing what the fuck happens to his life, and then immediately cutting back to where you left off on the Navidson record like nothing happened. With Zampano probably being the narrator. I think it's doable, but again, you would miss out on the formatting, which is a big draw of House of Leaves. It is a big part of its personality. I still think the actual story is very good and very interesting, but something is definitely lost in translation. But I do think you can adapt it. At least you can adapt like some of it. Let's see, what was the next thing we're going to talk about? Oh, I guess, sorry, just the next thing I wanted to say was I loved it, which, yeah, I did. I absolutely fucking loved it. To me, it really did live up to the hype of just, I don't know what the fuck is going on. Reading this shit at times can feel very claustrophobic. Fucking especially at the ending when Navidson's last exploration into the house, which is my favorite part of the novel, by the way. I absolutely loved it. So here's what I'm gonna do. I do want to go ahead and at this point go ahead and give my roadmap for the video. Like I just want to kind of get some like general thoughts of it out of the way without going to a lot of specifics. So yes, full spoilers ahead from this point forward. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blah blah blah. I really want to divide this into 3 sections. Section 1, I guess this whole roadmap is kind of section 1. But the first big section is, here's a lot of my general thoughts and theories, and then going into some specific things. My next, and then, let me try that again. There are some things I can say is like, these are general thoughts and observations. These are some general theories I have that pretty much apply to everything else. Then I have 2 big theories. Again, because I can't escape sea cats, the best way I can kind of explain it is here's the trick theory and here's the magic theory. Here's my trick theory and talking about that, and then here's my magic theory and talking about that. Or actually, let me check my notes. Which one do I have first, trick or magic? I just want to be sure. Actually, I have my magic theory first. So it's going to go general shit, magic theory, trick theory. And just something I feel like I should do is just show my notes real quick. I don't know how well you can see it, but what I wanted to show is that, yes, every time I wrote the word house in my notes, I wrote it in blue ink. Anytime I wrote the word Minotaur in my notes, I wrote it in red ink, and then I crossed it out. No, that is not something I had to do. It's like, this feels right. And like when I added it, because I have a giant list of, here's all the stuff I have done this year, so even though I take it off like another list, I can keep track of it. The word house is in blue, because it's fucking supposed to be in blue. When I started reading the book, and I look at like the very first page with like the publisher info, and the house in Random House is in blue, like, I don't get it. I have my theory on it, but I'm like, I fucking love this. This is cool. I feel like I'm in good hands. So now we will go ahead and move on to the general stuff, which the first thing I wanted to talk about was the formatting, which I already talked about with adapting the novel and shit. I've kind of already said that. Um, I did want to talk about a couple specific scenes, though, that do use the formatting. Again, full spoilers. One of my favorites is during Navidson's last exploration into the house, when he just keeps going down, and then he's at a part where he's going down a staircase, and then he turns around to go back up, but he realizes he's still going down because the house is fucking with him. I love how just the text on the page, like it starts at the top and then goes down the page, and then it's just at the bottom of the page for a while. And then when he gets to the staircase that's like backwards, he has to climb it up like some Ninja Warrior shit. The text just kind of going up, like the way the text follows him throughout his like spatial journey through the house, I think is really cool. Another one I have to bring up is there's this one section, I don't even think it's a full chapter, where there's like, here's the text, and then here's a giant footnote on one side of the page, another giant footnote on the other page, a big like square in the middle of the page, and then another square on the middle of the other page. One of the, I think it's like the square on the left reflects what's written on the right on the next page. So I guess let's say it like this. We're on like page 1 of this. The left square will have nothing. The right square will have some text, but the text is reversed. I think it's, at that point, it's, I don't remember exactly, but it's like the right one will have some text. Then you go to the next page. The right square will have completely new text. The left square will have the text the right square had on the last page. I hope I'm explaining this right. I probably should have just grabbed the copy of the book and illustrated it. Whoops. But it just keeps doing that, and then like when the right square ends up being empty on the next page, the left square is just like blacked out, and I think it's fucking cool. One of the squares is always written in reverse, which, you know, you can just flip to the next page or the previous page and be like, okay, I know what this says. And it is just this long rant where Zampano is saying, here's all the shit that the house doesn't have. And then after page, again, and with like these other footnotes, which are also these really long, I think it was just like a rant about like movies or like famous architects. It was some shit. And then after like page after page, you just get the picture that in your dreams. Sure, dog. Like, okay, what? Meanwhile, there's also like actual text just going through the story and analysis of the characters of the Navidson record. Like, oh, all right, I'm down for this, but what the fuck? Yeah, I mentioned it, like how the word house is always in blue, except for one time because it was in red because it was crossed out. I don't remember what the context was. And the word Minotaur is, every time it is mentioned, it is also in red and is also crossed out. Any text that is crossed out is immediately converted into red. Which again, that's something that would not be, I don't think you can adapt that. And I do feel like, again, like it's an important part of its character. I mean, again, in like a VN, you can easily do, again, fucking blue and red. I can't escape Umineko. It's gonna bother me for a few years. Just anytime I see the word Beatrice, like you're everywhere. Why are you fucking everywhere? But so getting away from the formatting, and actually, so I guess like to explain what the story is for people who are not familiar. House of Leaves is the book. You have 3 principal, I can't even say it like that. So essentially there's 3 stories going on at the same time. Well, Zampano isn't really a story, he almost kind of is. So, okay, so here's what happened. There is a movie, quote unquote, because it's debatable within the text if it's real or not, called The Navidson Record, which was this like found footage horror movie about a family moving into a house, and the house's spatial structure keeps changing. It can expand, it can get smaller, and them trying to like figure out why and explore it or not explore it, hire people to explore it, etc., as their lives are unraveling, as the house is getting bigger or smaller and shit. What you are mostly reading is called The Navidson Record, which I think that is the name of the film. But this man named Zampano, who was a blind man who claims to have seen this film, is writing a critical dissertation about the movie and explaining a lot of the plot, giving his analysis of the characters, referencing other people's analysis of the plot, of the themes, of the characters. And then there's a guy named Johnny Truant who is reading Zampano, because Zampano was died, like very, very early on in the book. Johnny gets his hands on the manuscript and is reading all of Zampano's notes and trying to kind of piece the manuscript together, because like, all right, there'll be parts written on paper, sometimes on like a napkin, like just, I gotta make sure I can put all of this together, because it just, at first it seems like it kind of gives him something to do, and then the more he does it, it's just, he can't escape it anymore. It's like almost like he is trapped within the house itself. And yeah, so that's the basis of it. So then the characters in the Navidson record, you have Will Navidson, his girlfriend Karen Green, I believe Green was her last name, their two kids, so they've been together a very long time, Chad and Daisy. Navy, Will Navidson, I will frequently call him Navy, that is his nickname in the story. Navy's twin brother Tom, and then some guys they end up hiring to explore the house, Holloway, Jed, I don't remember the name of the third guy. I feel like that's about it in terms of like the important people. And then like there's some people in Johnny's life. There's a stripper he knows that he calls Thumper because she has a tattoo of Thumper from Bambi like on her body. He has a friend named Lud, I believe it's Lud was the name of his friend, and then his just various sexcapades. Like there is Kitty, I think there was a girl named Amanda, etc., etc., etc. Just giving some of that background information. When it comes to... Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to check my notes for a second. Okay, I wanted to make sure, because now the next thing I want to do, which is kind of go into a general character analysis, blah, blah, blah. So when it comes to Navy and Karen, a big conflict in the Navidson record is they have moved out to the country. They were from New York. They moved out to, it was Virginia or West Virginia. I don't remember which. I think it was regular Virginia. But they moved out into the countryside and found the house. The thing was, Navy is a famous photographer. He's a journalist. Is he a journalist? No, he is just a photographer. But he does like a lot of like big name photographs. Like he's the Frank West. He's covered wars, you know. And Karen is a model. I don't know if she is still working or if she is retired at that point. I believe she's retired to look after the kids. But Navy doing his thing, he will frequently just get up, go, and disappear for a while. Like, he's not doing anything shady. He's not, like, cheating on his wife or anything. But his job takes him all around the world. It takes him into dangerous places. And Karen just kind of wants to have her husband around. She's terrified that she might lose him. And it has led to her seeking comfort from other people. Karen has infidelity issues. And Navy is aware of this. So this move was to say, okay, let's focus on our relationship. Let's focus on our family. I will move out into the country and stay with you. So I'm not going anywhere across the world so I can be here. And then her saying, okay, I won't go with anyone else because I love you and I want to work on this. And okay, sorry if that was kind of like a weird little, I don't know how this will look in the actual video. I think I was in the middle of saying something and then it just cuts. I paused because I realized finally that there's a fucking pause function. I know I say that I try not to do a lot of editing because I just want it to feel like it's one take. It's just an authentic conversation with me. But I also realized I kind of want to look at my notes and really organize my thoughts and then talk. And I just don't want there to be like 15 seconds of dead air. I think there kind of already was. And I don't want to do that again. I want this to flow a little better. So let me do this. I feel like, no, I should not try to go into like really talking about the characters. I need to just talk about my theory about the house because everything kind of follows after that. So, to me, what the house is, and this is regardless of my magic theory or trick theory, it is just in both. To me, the house is a sentient entity, which I don't feel like many people would disagree with that. It feels like it's very sentient. I don't think it's malevolent. To me, what I think the house is, it's the town of Silent Hill. At least Silent Hill 2. That's the only one I've experienced. I know in like 1 and 3, it's like, okay, there's like active cult shit going on. Excuse me. So I don't know how much the town feels alive or like a character. But in Silent Hill 2, which, full spoilers for Silent Hill 2, let me give a countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom. In Silent Hill 2, it feels like it is this location that draws to people with guilty minds and guilty consciences. Now, if you don't have a guilty mind or conscience, you can still go to Silent Hill, and it is this lovely resort town, and you can have just a nice time. But with that guilty conscience, that's when you get the fog, and that's when you get you start seeing the monsters. And then some people see it. Actually, I don't know if everyone sees the fog. It might just be that James saw the fog. Because I know Angela sees the fire, and Eddie sees, the cold meat locker. So, the town draws these people in with guilty consciences, and it starts to test them. To see, okay, this is what you did. This is your sin. Do you acknowledge your sin? And if you acknowledge your sin, and I mean, if you don't acknowledge it, it's gonna pester you until you do. Look at James. Once you have acknowledged your sin and you have been tested, did you pass or did you fail? What happens to you now? Which is one thing I love about Silent Hill 2 with just how many different endings it has. Depending on how the player actively played the game, did the player pass their test or did they fail? It's super fucking interesting. But to me, that's what the house is. Navy and Karen, like I said, wanted to keep their family unit together and keep their relationship strong. So what the house did was said, bet. Navy, your problem is your wanderlust. That you hear about a situation and you gotta go to it. You see that cool shit going on and you want to explore it. So here you go. I am going to make within myself this massive fucking labyrinth. It's black, it's cold, and it's huge. Because I know that you want to explore it. Karen, I know that, and don't ask me how the house knows this shit. I don't. I'm just assuming, kind of again, like the town of Silent Hill, it's just omniscient in some kind of way. But there's I know about your history with claustrophobia. That you... What? Sorry, I'm noticing the... Am I hallucinating? Is talking about House of Leaves fucking me up because I actually saw the edges of the video on my phone as it's recording pulsate? It's literally now doing it. Is it because I'm moving my hands and that's why it's doing it? I've never noticed that before. Okay, that kind of scared the shit out of me. Continuing. I know, Karen, that you were claustrophobic. You hate enclosed spaces. You hate dark spaces. So as much as Navy wants to explore this, I know you just as badly won't. And this is the test of your relationship. Can he resist his desire to explore for your sake? Or can you overcome your fear to tackle this with him? Because it doesn't matter which of you does. One of you is going to have to sacrifice something. Potentially both of you. But at least one of you needs to sacrifice for this relationship. Who's it going to be? Here's the labyrinth. How do you want to play? And In addition to this, like as the house is getting bigger, as Navidson is, struggling with his desire to explore, but also the fact that he's like, if I do, I know I basically lose Karen, and I can't lose Karen, but it's right there, I want it. And then also just like measuring the house and realizing that even without the labyrinth, the house is growing. It is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside, like a fucking TARDIS. He calls his brother Tom, who he hasn't talked to in for fucking ever, and they're kind of working on fixing their relationship. Like I said, they hire some dudes because Navy's like, I want to explore, I want to know what's in there. But Billy, I forgot about Billy. Billy Reston, I think, who's just like another friend of theirs that helps with some of their explorations and shit. But they hire some dudes to go explore because the Vincent's like, I want to, but I can't, but I still need to know what's in there. And as this is all happening, I feel like the house is kind of snickering to itself going, so how are your kids, by the way? Like, I know the big thing was you two wanted to fix your relationship and work on your issues, but this was supposed to be for the family unit, and how are your kids? Because they don't pay a lot of attention to their kids. And there's a couple scenes where the kids give, they talk about, like, some of the drawings that Chad and Daisy have done at school. There's this one thing where Daisy's like, Dad, I want to play always. And he's like, I don't know what that means. And Zampano notes in his narration, he's like, there's been a lot of discussion about what the fuck that means. Like, is that an actual name of a game? Is it just like she's a small kid, so she was trying to say something else and misspoke it? But the word always sounds a lot like hallways. That thing that Navidson really wants to explore. So almost like subconsciously, it's like he can't escape his desires and shit. Which I think is just super fucking interesting. I love it. But I feel like, yeah, you get Navy is being tested and Karen is being tested. But they are not the only ones. It is also like paying attention to their kids. Which I guess it's still them, but another version of it. Holloway, the guy they hire, is also being tested. Holloway is this big outdoorsman. He's this kind of, which words I want to use, like Paul Bunyan, Davy Crockett kind of dude. It's like, his big thing is, I want to explore, because like that's just kind of my shtick, and also I want to be the dude who found something, who explored something, so people know who I am, who remember me. But when you actually get some of his background, excuse me, it's clear that he has this massive inferiority complex. And so it's not just like, I want to find shit because it's cool. It's like, I want to be famous. It's like, he wants to almost like justify his own existence and justify his own manhood. And so when the two dudes he takes with him, who are also very experienced outdoorsmen, hey bub, outdoorsmen, experienced like rock climbers and shit, they get to a point where they're like, we kind of need to turn back Holloway. Like, it's like we are running out of supplies because the house keeps getting bigger at that point, which to me, again, is like the house going, you want to explore? You want to find something? Here it is. And you're just going to find more and more and more and more. Have a good fucking time. Like, you cocky sons of bitches. I'm gonna enjoy this. It's like, okay, like, I feel like the house is a little malevolent. Like, I don't feel like it's full-on evil, but I do feel like it has a sense of humor when it's doing its tests. Oh, hey, Bob. So that's how Holloway is being tested, and the fact that his friends say, no, like, we have to turn back. It's just too dangerous at this point. Like, let's cut our losses. And he says no. Because he has failed his test. You can just say, look, I'm not prepared for this. Like, I was able to find something. I need to be able to go back and regroup. But his inferiority complex was too strong, and he ended up taking it out on them, and he shot them. Now, I don't believe it is in that moment. I think it's something like he can't tolerate insubordination. Like, that's just mutiny. And then he thinks there's a monster in there, and so he's trying to shoot the monster. He ends up shooting one of them. The guy doesn't die, and he's like, oh, fuck. Well, I can't let anyone know that I shot somebody. So that leads to some shit with, like, them trying to escape, and then they've been in there for, like, a week or so, and then so Navy's like, we need to go in there and find them. Karen, I am going in there, not because I want to go in there, but because someone has to go in there. We have to make sure they're safe. Oh, I can't wait to finally go in there and explore. Like, you can tell, like, it's both, but he really wants to go explore. And I also remember that it didn't take them as long, because, like, the staircase, when Holloway and them are going down, it's fucking massive. Like, it takes them, I think, a couple days to go down. With Navy and Billy, I think it takes them, like, 10 minutes. It's like, yeah, you know, for you, this isn't, you're not being tested quite yet. Like, of course, there's, like, Navy's Wanderlust and shit, but it's like, the house is saving something for Navidson. Right? And I was like, no. Go find them. It might still take you a little while, but I want you to find them. I want you to be able to get them out. Then afterwards, Navidson ends up being stuck in the house for a while. Excuse me, if I'm remembering it correctly, it's like they're able to find the guys, get them out with like a pulley that Tom sets up because Tom is a homie. But when it's Navidson's turn, he just starts sinking. And I think it's another part where like the formatting gets really cool and reflects that. But he isn't able to escape. It's like, okay, Navidson. You got in. You almost got in on a technicality. It's like, yeah, you were here to save those dudes. But now the dudes have been saved. And here you are. Do you want to explore or do you want to go back to your family? And for a while, Navidson explores. And I remember as I was reading it, kind of realizing it's not until he very specifically starts thinking about his family that he is able to escape. That he is actually able to like get back to the staircase and climb out. Because when he wasn't focused on them and he just wanted to explore and see shit, that's what the house allowed. It wasn't until he's like, no, I have to go back. And it's like, okay, you've passed the test. Well, kind of. I just wanted to check something real quick. But then after that happens, the house starts to kind of collapse in on itself. And I feel like to me, that was also the house kind of going like, okay, cool. Good job. You were able to escape. Essentially, like, you were able to love your family enough to overcome your wanderlust. Good fucking shit. How are your kids, by the way? Because as the house is starting to implode and like almost like eat itself, which is actually a pretty fun scene. It's pretty cool. They don't know where the kids are, and they're actively trying to find the kids, and they do. But Tom ends up losing his life. Like, it is Tom that sacrifices himself for Navy's kids and not the other way around. And Tom ends up being just kind of like absorbed into the darkness, never seen again. So like he is dead. Which, fucking heartbreaking shit. Tom is awesome. Like, just that whole long sequence of him sitting by the radio as Navy and Billy go into the... I mean, as they, like, went into the house and into the labyrinth. It's really good shit. But... Sorry, brain stopped for a second. To me, the sacrifice of Tom... Again, it feels like the house having a sense of humor, like a fucked up, but a sense of humor about it. It's like, you know what? You passed, in a sense. You're able to find your kids. You're able to come back to your family. But I didn't forget what you said about your brother a little bit ago. You guys had asked Tom to meet you at the bottom of the staircase to help get your family out, or like to help get these guys out and to blah, blah, blah. And Tom wasn't there. And Navy's almost immediate reaction is he's like, you know, that's classic Tom. When you need him most, he lets you down. And almost as soon as he says that, like, the pulley comes down. It's like, yeah, Tom had a better idea. Tom came in clutch. But the house didn't forget that Navy, like, as soon as the chips were down, basically abandoned his brother. It was like, nah, fuck my brother. He's a useless piece of shit. It's like, oh, you think that, huh? Well, when it comes to your wife... or not wife, that girlfriend, because they are not married. It's like, when it comes to her, ultimately you passed, I'll give you that. Your kids, in a sense, you kind of passed. But you failed when it comes to your brother. So you're going to lose him. I am taking him from you. Fuck you. So that happens. I hope that's the thumbnail. That'd be really funny. I'm talking about House of Lee. The fucking classic Eli Manning. Anyways, sorry about that. But that happens. After they leave the house, because at that point they move away because, I mean, the house is kind of imploded. After a while, Navy goes back. And that's what leads to, like, his final exploration, which I've said is my favorite part of the book. Because, like, this is the final test. You've all moved away. Karen and the kids are back in New York. And you're not there. You're with Billy, you know, like, going through all of the, like, found footage, trying to figure out some shit, and your final test is, are you going back to your family, or can you not resist the thrill? And ultimately, he chooses the thrill. Vincent goes back into the house, and after this long period of exploration, he is left in darkness. And all he finds at the end of it, which, actually, I think I'm going to put a pin in that specific thought. Yeah, I'm going to put a pin in that specific thought of, like, that whole scene where he is in the darkness and he's reading the book, because that's why it's my favorite scene. Like, holy shit, we'll talk about that. But so when that happens, like, Karen ends up going back to the house, and she sits there for a while to wait for him. And then she finally says, fuck it, I am going to go in there. And when she does, at least the way I remember it, the way I had read it, was it seemed like it didn't take her very long. Because, like, Navidson was in there for a fucking while. Just going, riding a bike, going down, and then, like, the fucking darkness was just absorbed. Fucking darkness, like Kingdom Hearts. Just absorbing everything around him. Until it was just him floating in the dark. But not long after Karen went in after him, she was able to find him. Navidson had his trials of exploration or my family. Some of them he kind of passed. This one he very much didn't. But Karen had her trials as well. And when push came to shove, eventually, she was willing to sacrifice for him and was able to save him. Now, because Navidson failed his test, he's not completely fine after. I think it's like one of his eyes is fucked up. One of his legs is fucked up. It was something Clay pointed out, which I don't think I thought of. He's like, yeah, you know, it's Navidson was this, like, he was a traveler and a photographer. What did he lose? He lost his legs, so it's harder to travel, and he lost one of his eyes, so it's harder to take pictures. Like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. That makes the fact that he failed the test and this is what happened. That's like fucking poetic justice. It works out really well. Okay. So the other things I want to say while we're still on the general part is Johnny. I don't have a whole lot to say about Johnny, mostly because I have no idea how much of what I read actually happened. Johnny is the one who says pretty early on, he's like, yeah, I've tried to find the Navidson record. I've tried looking it up. It doesn't seem to be real. Like, I think Zampano was just off his rocker. He was just making some shit up. But as the narrative goes along, and Johnny just starts actively hallucinating, and it happens several times, like, I don't know how much I can trust you. So maybe the Navidson record is all bullshit. And that's essentially what my trick and magic theory is. It's the magic theory is the Navidson record actually happened, and all of Zampano's sources are legit, or the trick theory, which is, no, Zampano just made it all up. Like, I have two different theories about it, like I said, but regardless, I just don't trust Johnny Truant. But he has his test as well. As he is reading the manuscript, as he is reading about the house, Johnny's life is very empty. It's very hollow. He doesn't have a lot of strong connections. He doesn't have a lot of strong goals or ambitions. It's just kind of like, yeah, you know, I wake up, I go to work, I fuck a lot of women. I make up a lot of stories about my life to make it more interesting so I can sleep with more women. I do a lot of drugs because it's just a thing I like to do. And it seems very clear that this is someone who just, like, I remember I was watching a scene for BoJack Horseman earlier, and it's a scene where BoJack is, he gives his line about, like, you'll wake up one day where everybody loves you, but nobody likes you, and it's the most lonely thing in the world. But one of the things he says there is, like, you can have this hole inside of you that's never filled, and you'll try to fill it. Like, you might try with other people, you might try it with success, with your career, with drugs. But the more you try to fill it, the more empty you become. And to me, that's kind of what Johnny is. But at the start of the novel, he doesn't seem to realize how empty he is. He's kind of fine with it. But after reading the book, that's when it starts to bother him. And that is his test, ultimately. It's like, cool, what are you going to do with this? Are you going to actively try and get a hold of your life? Are you going to try to fix it? Are you going to try to actually settle down with someone? Are you going to try to find a job that you really love? I mean, it seems like he likes the tattoo parlor enough, but he even says, he's like, I really want to, like, be a designer of making the tattoos, but my boss never likes my design. It's like, okay, like, are you going to try to really become an artist and, like, have some ambition and do something? But he doesn't. His life just gets more and more empty. By the end, it's not really clear what happened to him. My personal theory... Oh, Bub, why you nibbling on my hand? Why you gotta do me like that? Oh, what is that? What is that? To me, I'm pretty fucking sure he killed himself. And at that point, it seems like that is just kind of the only ending there is. It's... The more, like, he just realized how empty he is, how much he doesn't care for his life, how nothing it all is. So this was the only option. He found peace, but it's just really fucked, really sad. Now, when it comes to Zampano, I really can't say anything about him without going to my magic or trick theory, because to me, he is the crux of that. So the last thing I want to say before moving on to those specific theories, I'll take a bit of a break first, is when it comes to the title of the book, what it means, what House of Leaves means. For me, it's just, when I think of like a leaf or leaves, the symbol that comes to mind is just change. Like when you get to autumn, when you get to fall, you see the leaves actively changing color. And that's how you can really tell, like the seasons are moving. That's how you know you're in autumn. I mean, that's what it is. It's like House of Leaves essentially means House of Change. Both in the sense that the house itself physically changes. Also the fact that you are not leaving this house unchanged. When Navidson finally left the house, he was a different person. Mentally, his outlook on life, but also physically. Again, his eye and his leg were fucked up. Karen did not leave that house unchanged. She was able to face her fear for the man she loved, and I feel like she kind of became a better person as a result of the house. Tom certainly didn't leave the house unchanged. He didn't get to fucking leave the house. And, like, same for Holloway and, like, some of these other people. That's, to me, what it is. It is just about change, confronting your inner demons, the Minotaur, and overcoming them. Or, I guess that's it. Like, when you confront your demons, you either overcome them or you succumb to them. There's kind of no other way around it. So, like I said, I'm going to take a bit of a break, and then I'm going to come back and talk about my magic theory, the record being a real shit, or the trick theory that it's all in Zampano's head.